What if the Bible you have on your shelf is incomplete? What if there is an ancient chronicle, a secret Bible, that the Western world has ignored for centuries? A text that doesn't just mention the Ark of the Covenant, but tells you exactly where it is. We're talking about the Kebra Nagast, the glory of kings. It explains the forbidden history of what really happened after Solomon, why the Queen of Sheba isn't just a side character, and why Ethiopia has held the belief for thousands of years that they are, in fact, God's true chosen nation. Why has the West never let you read it? And what does it reveal about the secret lineage that still claims a throne today? It's time to open the pages that were intentionally left out of your Sunday school lessons. To understand the Kebra Nagast, you have to understand that this isn't just a book, it's an identity. Formally compiled in the 14th century, it brings together oral traditions, Ge'ez manuscripts, and historical accounts that go back to the very dawn of the Solomonic dynasty. While Western scholars might label it apocryphal or legendary for the people of Ethiopia, it is a living document. It was compiled by high-ranking priests and scholars who were tasked with preserving the memory of a civilization that saw itself as the true successor to the biblical Israel. The text is written in Ge'ez, the liturgical language of the Ethiopian Church, a language that is as mysterious to the modern ear as the contents of the book are to the modern Western mind. It is a synthesis. It takes the Old Testament, the traditions of the early church, and the distinct sovereign history of the Ethiopian kings, and weaves them into one master narrative. It's not just a history book, it's a theological claim to legitimacy. But what is that claim? It centers on a meeting between two of the most powerful rulers in ancient history, and a secret that left Jerusalem forever. The Kebra Nagast hinges on an encounter that the Standard Bible barely touches, the journey of Makeda, the Queen of Sheba, to Jerusalem. While the Bible mentions her visit to Solomon's court for his wisdom, the Kebra Nagast adds the missing piece. It was a quest for a spiritual successor. Makeda, a ruler of incredible wealth and intellect, traveled to Jerusalem to see if the rumors of Solomon's wisdom and the power of his God were true. What she found was beyond her expectations. The text describes a deep, foundational connection between them, a union that resulted in the birth of Menelik I. Menelik wasn't just a royal heir. He was, according to the tradition, the physical embodiment of the covenant between the wisdom of the Levant and the greatness of the African highlands. When Menelik grew up, he traveled to Jerusalem to meet his father, Solomon. And this is the moment the narrative shifts from history to the world-altering event that haunts archaeology to this day. Solomon, recognizing his son's destiny, tried to convince Menelik to rule by his side. But Menelik's destiny was elsewhere. According to the Kebra Nagast, he left Jerusalem, but he didn't leave empty-handed. He took with him the glory that dwelt in the temple, the Ark of the Covenant itself. The story tells us that this wasn't theft, it was a divine transfer. The Kebra Nagast claims that the Ark of the Covenant was moved from the corruptible hands of the leaders in Jerusalem to the protected, sanctified soil of Ethiopia. This is the cornerstone of their national identity, that they are the true New Israel, the guardians of the most holy relic in history. You have to understand the gravity of what the Kebra Nagast did for Ethiopia. It wasn't just a collection of stories, it was the legal and spiritual constitution of the Ethiopian Empire. By codifying the story of Menelik I and the arrival of the Ark, the Ethiopian monarchy established a claim that no other nation on earth could challenge, the Solomonic dynasty. For centuries, every emperor of Ethiopia had to trace their bloodline back to that union between Solomon and Sheba. This wasn't just posturing, it was the bedrock of their geopolitics. It allowed Ethiopia to remain a fortress of sovereignty while the rest of the African continent was being colonized. They didn't see themselves as a small kingdom. They saw themselves as the true successors to the kingdom of God on earth. This power lasted through the rise of Islam, through the Crusades, and right into the modern era. Look at Haile Selassie, the last emperor of Ethiopia. He didn't rule as a man who won an election. He ruled as the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah. He was seen as the direct descendant of the line established in the Kebra Nagast. When you read the text, you realize that the Ethiopian church and the state were one and the same, bound together by the belief that they were the keepers of the Ark. This gave them an unmatched morale and a diplomatic weight that made them the Third Rome. While Europe was fighting over borders, Ethiopia was holding its ground because they believed they were protecting the physical presence of the Creator's throne. It was this conviction, written in the pages of their secret Bible, that made them practically invincible to outside influence for nearly 2,000 years. So why haven't you heard about the Kebra Nagast in school or at your local church? The answer is a mix of theological gatekeeping and colonial arrogance. In the West, we operate under a canon, a list of books that the early church decided were inspired. Because the Kebra Nagast wasn't part of the Greco-Roman tradition, Western scholars spent centuries dismissing it as legend, myth, or later invention. They couldn't, or wouldn't accept that a civilization outside of Europe could have a more direct, unbroken line to the biblical narrative than they did. The distinction here is vital. The Kebra Nagast isn't anti-Bible. To the Ethiopian church, it is complementary. It's the hidden history that fills the gaps in the story of the Ark and the genealogy of the kings. By calling it apocryphal, Western academia effectively quarantined the text, keeping it out of the mainstream conversation so that it wouldn't challenge the European-centric version of Christianity. Think about the implications. If the Kebra Nagast were accepted as true, it would mean that the chosen people narrative didn't stop in the Middle East. It moved to Africa. It would mean that the most sacred object in the Old Testament, the Ark, isn't in a secret vault in the Vatican or under the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. It's in a chapel in Axum. The West didn't ignore this book because it was false. They ignored it because it was dangerous to their narrative. It challenges the entire structure of Old World religious authority. And now, as we see a global resurgence in interest regarding the Ark and ancient hidden truths, the Kebra Nagast is finally being pulled out of the dark. But what does it mean for the future of our understanding of history? So, what is the Kebra Nagast? It's not just an old manuscript, it is the missing puzzle piece in the history of the world. By dismissing it as myth, the West didn't just ignore a book, they ignored an entire civilization's claim to the most sacred heritage in human history. Whether you believe the Ark is still resting in Axum or that the Solomonic lineage is a divine truth, the fact remains. Ethiopia has preserved a narrative that the rest of the world tried to forget. In an age of disclosure, where everything we thought we knew about our origins is being called into question, the Glory of Kings stands as a silent witness to a reality that refuses to die. The story didn't end with Solomon. It didn't end in Jerusalem. It traveled. It was protected. And it is still waiting for the world to pay attention. We've only touched the surface of the secrets held within this ancient lineage. In the next video, we are going to look specifically at the journey of Menelik I, the incredible, tactical, and spiritual operation he allegedly led to secure the Ark. If you want to dive deeper into the history that your textbook skipped, hit that subscribe button. The investigation into the forbidden archives of the world is far from over.